The weather is cooling down here in Phoenix. It's time to get outside and start cooking over an open fire again. And what better way to start cooking than with a medieval recipe for a pork pie. This is actually called Herbe Blade, which means chopped herbs. And the chopped herbs are an important part of this pie, but the basic pie is a meat pork pie. This recipe comes originally from two 15th century cookbooks that are in the British Library Harley Manuscript. The version I'm using I found in an issue of the Complete Anachronist. This issue was written by Jeff Barry, and it's called A Medieval Cookery Primer, a Programmed Approach. In this, Jeff Barry compares medieval cooking to early modern cooking and modern cooking, helping to show the development or the progression of cooking from the early days up to today. The recipe itself goes like this. Herbe Blade. Take butts of pork and smite them in pieces and set them on the fire, and seethe it in fair water. And when it is sodden enough, take it out, and baught it, and pike out the bones, and hew it small, and put it in a fair bowl. And take hyssop, sage, and parsley a good quantity. Pick it, and hew it small, and put it in a fair vessel. And take a little of the broth from the pork, and sodden it, and draw it through a strainer, and cast it to the herb blade, and let it a-boil. Then take it out the herbs with a skimmer from the broth, and cast them into the pork in a bowl, and then mince fair dates small, and cast them thereto, and raisins of currants and pines, and draw raw egg yolks through a strainer, and cast thereto sugar, powder of ginger, salt. Color it with a little saffron, and troll it with the hand, all this together in the bowl. And then make fair round coffins, and put them in the oven, and harden them a little, and take them out again, and with a dish in the hand, fill them full of the stuff, and set them again in the oven all open, and let them bake enough, and then serve it forth. The pork I used I got from the local grocery store, and it was a pork shoulder picnic, is what it was called. Got a really good boil now, but the meat doesn't yet fall off the bone. Pork's been boiling about an hour and a half now. Should be done. I'm going to bring it in. See if cut the meat off the bone. It's coming off nicely. This recipe calls for a number of different herbs for being chopped up, Herbe Blade. So I'm going to take a little bit of mint here because I like mint. Here's a medieval herb that's actually pretty hard to find today, rue. I'm going to try a little bit of rue. And maybe a sprig of rosemary. The recipe calls for sage. So I've got a little bit of sage here. There's actually two different kinds of sage. You'll notice these have rounder leaves and these have elongated leaves. So we'll get maybe a couple leaves from each of those. Another hard to find medieval herb is chervil. I needed some for a previous recipe and couldn't find it, but I did get some now, so I've got it growing in the garden. Parsley is needed, so I have some flat Italian parsley here to use. How about a little basil? And always appropriate is maybe some bay leaf. So get a few of the fresh leaves. The name of this recipe, Herbe Blade, actually refers to chopped herbs, which is the main ingredient other than the pork. So I'm going to chop the herbs. The recipe calls for sage, parsley, and hyssop. I don't have hyssop, but I have chervil, basil, bay leaf, rosemary, rue, and mint that I'm going to chop and add in as well. The bay leaves are pretty hard, so I'm going to leave those whole so I can pull them out later. Everything else gets chopped up together. Take a little of the broth that the pork was sodden in and draw it through a strainer and cast it to the herb blade and set it a-boil. Take out the herbs with a skimmer from the broth and cast them into the pork in the bowl, and then mince fair dates small and cast them thereto, and raisins of currants. For the pie crust or coffin, I also used a recipe from The Complete Anachronist by Jeff Berry that was the hot water crust. This recipe called for butter and lard, but I used just butter, water, flour, a teaspoon of salt, and 2 eggs beaten. the butter was melted in the water, and then the other ingredients were mixed with the flour, and then the melted butter in the water was added into the soft dough and mixed together to make the pie crust. This was baked first for about 15 minutes at 425 degrees, and then it was removed and the pie filling added into it. Draw raw egg yolks through a strainer and add thereto sugar, powder of ginger, salt. Color it with a little saffron and twirl it with the hand, all this together in the bowl. And then make fair round coffins and put them in the oven and harden them a little, and take them out again, and with a dish in the hand fill them full of the stuff and set them again in the oven all open, and let them bake enough, and then serve it forth. It's time to cut the pie, and so I'm going to just take a little slice out of it, see how it tastes. The pie a try now. Herbe Blade pork pie. See how it tastes. Tastes mostly like pork. I'm getting the ginger flavors coming in now. When I get a currant or a date, I can taste that, but it didn't flavor the overall pie. The herb flavor is not very strong. I could have used more herbs. That would have increased the flavor of the herbs in there. The crust is good. It's pretty tasty. It's a good pie. I've never had a pork pie. Actually, that's what this is a pork pie. So it would be a good dish for any time you needed a pork pie with the herbs. And the flavor is very good. Thank you for watching.